Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're having a great day, not just a good day. So today's mystery case is actually going to be a case that is going to leave you disgusted and very angry like it did me. We're going to be talking about the popular Jeffrey Dahmer, one of the worst serial killers in the world. Dahmer was born in Milwaukee in Wisconsin on the 21st of May in 1960. Jeffrey was actually a very normal boy when he was growing up, but by the time he got to like 4 years old, he had a surgery for hernia. So his parents actually were very worried about this, but it didn't change the fact that his parents were very toxic. They were always fighting. The mom was always kind of craving attention from the dad, and sometimes the dad would report to the police station that the wife was making threats about suicide, and she actually did try to commit suicide at one point in time. She would overdose, take drugs, and just drink alcohol anytime. And Jeffrey's dad would come back from work very late. Sometimes he won't even come back that day. And it was always a fight between both parents. So Jeffrey living in this environment obviously probably affected his mindset and how he reasons. After Jeffrey Dahmer did the operation for his hernia, he kind of changed. The things that he was interested in before the operation, he wasn't interested in anymore. He started becoming interested in roadkill, dead animals, and whatnot. There was even a time where there was a dog that died, his neighbor's dog, where he lived, and he took the dog, cut the dog off the head, and took it to his backyard where he would remove the head of the dog and place it with a nail on the tree. So the dog's body was basically lying on the floor while the dog's head was just pinned to the tree. In 1966, the Dahmers, that's Jeffrey Dahmer and his family, they moved to Ohio where they would start a new life. And this had already become a very huge problem in Dahmer's head because he was already finding a very hard time making friends at school. So moving was going to be even harder. So Dahmer went to school in Ohio for his first year, and when he came back and his parents and his family were eating on the table, they announced to Dahmer that they were going to have a new baby boy and they were going to let him name it. At least some excitement in his life, he thought. But like, it wasn't really that much exciting for him because he was already having some serious thoughts and thinking of killing animals, and he was just interested in roadkill. So while they were eating on the table, he asked his dad, "What do you think will happen to this chicken if we placed it in bleach solution?" This was a very weird question, especially to his mom, because he was like, why is he even thinking about that? But Jeffrey's dad is a chemist and he feels like his son is just interested in what he does, like scientific curiosity. And he encouraged Jeffrey to actually find out what will happen if he puts this chicken inside solution. After their meal, they took the bone downstairs where the father showed him what they usually do in the lab, and was actually very proud of the fact that Jeffrey was interested in his scientific life. At Jeffrey's new school, his high school mates would say that Jeffrey is very weird. He would bring alcohol to school sometimes and be taking alcohol in the middle of class. He also found out that he was gay at a point in time when he got to high school, and he had a boyfriend for a short period of time in high school. In 1977, Jeffrey Dahmer's parents got a divorce, and the mom won the custody of the little brother that Jeffrey named, called David. And this actually made Jeffrey's condition become even worse because his grades started declining and he started even consuming more alcohol than he could have. After the mom won the custody of David, she went on a vacation and left Jeffrey at home. And Jeffrey was already 18 at this point, so she didn't think that Jeffrey would need any more help or any more looking after, so she just left Jeffrey at home. On the 18th of June 1978, when Jeffrey was coming back from a store, he met a hitchhiker called Stephen Hicks. He was just hiking close by, and Jeffrey stopped his car and asked him, "Hey, I'm kind of lonely. Do you want to just follow me home and we'll just have a beer and just drink and talk and whatever?" And Stephen, for some weird reason, agreed. So they went to Jeffrey's house and they were just chilling. They were drinking beer. He put on a movie for Stephen and they were just having fun and talking. And Stephen even mentioned the fact that he was in love with a particular girl. And I don't know if this riled Jeff up because he was interested in Stephen, but I doubt that would have been the case, or maybe it was. I really don't know. After a while of spending hours in Jeffrey's house, Stephen stood up and was like, I'm thankful for the fact that you brought me here to chill and whatnot. I would have to leave now. And Jeffrey just becomes very weird and is like, don't leave. Stephen is very confused and is like, what do you mean don't leave? Like, okay, maybe you're just lonely. I'll stay here for an extra 30 minutes and then I'll have to leave. Jeffrey agrees, goes in to do whatever he was going to do or whatever he was doing already. And Stephen just keeps on watching TV. When in 5 minutes, Jeffrey just carries 10 pounds of dumbbells and uses it to hit Stephen's head. And Stephen falls on the floor. He's unconscious. And Jeffrey strangles him. After strangling him, he masturbated all over him and then dismembers his body. He also dismembers his body and soaks his flesh in acid like his dad taught him for the chicken that they ate earlier at dinner when he was younger. This was the first time that Jeffrey ever practiced that thing that his dad taught him. During that same year, Jeff's dad had remarried and was living happily somewhere where he just decided to come to check on Jeff and find out how he's doing. He came with his new fiancée and they check on Jeff and they see that Jeff was living alone. So they try to convince Jeff to go to school and start something, to university and start something. And Jeff agreed and decided to go to school. But after like a whole semester, Jeff had a CPGA of 0.5 and this was pretty bad. So the dad and the fiancée again, which had already married at this time, convinces Jeff to go to the US Army. And after like a year or two, he had found himself in Germany as a combat medic soldier in the military. In March of 1981, Jeff was disbanded from the army because he had had lots of complaints and 2 soldiers had already reported to the authorities that Jeff had drugged and raped them, and he was also disbanded because of alcohol use. After this, he moved to Florida because he did not want to tell his dad that he had left the army at that point because he knew his dad was going to be really, really mad. So he gets a motel in Florida and he's living there for like, it wasn't even up to a month, and they kicked him out because he did not have enough money to pay. And obviously because he had no other option, he had to call his father to ask him to move in with him. And obviously the father found out that he was kicked out of the army. So the father agreed to allow Jeff move in, but on the consideration that he has to work and do a lot of chores. And Jeff agreed. So Jeff moved back home with his dad, and his dad was not pleased with him because his drinking problems got even worse. And the dad was so angry that he decided to kick Jeff out of the house and move him to his grandmother's house where he would obviously help her with work. Jeff wasn't really happy about this decision, but he had to do what his dad said because he had no money and no other means to take care of himself. Living with his grandmother actually made Jeff really happy. He felt like this was where he needed to be, and he got a job and they fired him 10 months after. And after those 10 months, he never got a job again after 2 years. So Jeff started going to bathhouses and sleeping with gay men. Jeff hated the fact that when he's talking to a particular gay man in the bathhouse, they talk too much or they are moving their body too much and not moving how he wants them to move. And instead of trying to talk to these people to move how he wants them to move, Jeff would just drug them. And when they are gone in their sleep, Jeff would masturbate and rape them. The bathhouse eventually found out about this after like a period of 1 month, so they revoked his membership and Jeff was kicked out of the bathhouse. After this, Jeff thought that he doesn't even need the bathhouse and he could just do whatever he wanted to do in his apartment and just invite people over. So on the 20th of November 1987, Jeff met a man called Tuomi at the bar, and he just talks to him and invites him over to his house. Jeff actually says that he has no memory of killing Tuomi, that he just woke up in the morning and saw that Tuomi's chest was beaten out of and his fists were covered in blood, that he had no intention of killing Tuomi and Tuomi's death was actually a mistake on his path. So Jeff dismembered Tuomi's body and bought a suitcase, cut his body into pieces and put some parts of his body in acid to dissolve it, and he was trying to retain the skull, but he did not have the actual bleach to do that. So the skull became brittle, and he was bummed about this and just decided that he was going to try again in 2 months so that the next time he has a victim, he gets to preserve the skull. So after this, he began to seek his victims beside gay bars, gay clubs, and whatnot so that he can drug them and rape them. So he began to seek victims near gay bars, gay restaurants, anywhere that it just has to do with alcohol, and he will invite them to his grandmother's place and he will drug them and rape them. Dahmer's next victim was a man called James Dockstator that he met at a bar, and Jeff just invited him over to his grandmother's house where they were talking indoors, and he offered James a drink and James drank it, and like an hour later James was feeling sleepy and he was feeling like he was gone, and Jeff strangled him and raped him and dismembered him like he did the previous body. Jeff went back to that same gay bar and he met a 22-year-old man called Richard Guerrero, where he actually lured him again to his grandmother's place. And Richard was actually bisexual, so he was always saying this repeatedly to Jeff, and I think Jeff got mad that he was bisexual, even though we all know that's not the reason why he would even want to kill him, because he was still going to die anyways because he was in Jeff's hands. And Jeff drugged him, strangled him, killed him, and dismembered his body. But Jeff retained his skull and got the right acid to preserve the skull this time, and also kept it inside a bag that he had. On the 23rd of April of that same year, Jeffrey met another young man at a gay bar and invited him to his house. But on this particular day, when he was coming in with this man, Jeffrey's grandmother heard a noise downstairs, and the grandmother asked, "Who are you with?" And he had to lie, obviously, and say no one. But the grandmother obviously knew that he was with somebody, so he couldn't really operate what he wanted to do that particular day because he already thought that his grandmother knew that he was with someone. So instead of doing what he wanted to do, Jeff took his victim to the county general hospital to be treated like as if the person got drugged at a bar, and he helped him to get to the hospital and whatnot. In September of 1988, Dahmer's grandmother asked him to move out because of the foul smell that was always coming from his room and the basement, and the fact that he just had a drinking problem. So he moved out, and 2 days later he got an apartment where he was even arrested for taking a 13-year-old boy from the street and trying to sexually harass him. And this was a very, very bad case because the grandmother got to hear about it, the dad got to hear about it, and they had to basically bail him out of the situation. Apparently, Jeffrey had lured this boy into his apartment and tried to get him to take nude photographs for an amount of pay like $50 or $100. So this was a very huge case in court, and Jeffrey's dad got him an attorney that defended him in court. This attorney actually suggested that Jeff undergoes psychological evaluation, where they found out that Jeff had deep feelings of alienation. He was an impulsive individual, suspicious of others, dismayed by his lack of accomplishments in his life, schizoid, and had a schizoid personality disorder. Jeffrey pleaded guilty and spent 2 months in jail, and then after he got out, he moved back to his grandmother's house. After just 2 months of living in his grandmother's house, he had murdered his 5th victim, called Anthony Sears. He met Anthony at a gay bar near his grandmother's home, and he actually found Anthony very, very attractive because Anthony was the only victim so far that he preserved his genitals and stored it in acetone so that he can preserve and look at it every day. Not long after, he met 32-year-old Raymond Smith, and he drugged him with 7 sleeping pills, and he took Polaroid pictures of Raymond in suggestive positions in his room. And right after this, he strangled Raymond, dismembered his body, and preserved it in acid. 1 week after doing this to Raymond Smith, he met another gay man in the bar and he brought him home to take Polaroid pictures for him. And in the process, actually, Dahmer mistakenly consumed the drink that was intended for this particular victim. So when Dahmer slept off by mistake, this person stole $300 from Dahmer, stole a watch, stole some clothing, and ran away. And Dahmer was really pissed off at this, so he reported to his probation officer. That's the probation officer that was in charge of him, for the fact that he wanted to molest that 13-year-old boy that he went to jail for. And the probation officer tried to help, but there wasn't really much he could do. So in June of 1990, he met another gay man at a bar called Edward Smith. And he lured Edward into his home, drugged him, and strangled him to death, where he also preserved his skull and some parts of his bones. And at this time, actually, he made a mistake again where he put too much acid on the skeleton bones of the body, and it made him very angry because the skull and the bones of the body could not be preserved properly, so he threw everything away. Less than 3 months after doing this, he met another Chicago native called Ernest Miller, and he met Ernest Miller at a gay bar also and decided to give him $50 for coming back home with him and posing for Polaroid pictures. But at this particular time, Jeffrey had only 2 sleeping pills, and he usually laces his victims' drink with like 5 pills or more, but he had only 2 this day. So when he gave this particular victim the sleeping pills in the drink, he just used a knife to slash his neck and he bled to death. And Jeffrey did the normal. He dismembered the body of his victim, slept with it, and preserved the flesh and skull inside the freezer, then proceeded to take it to the oven. 3 weeks after the kill that was just mentioned, he met 22-year-old David Thomas. And he met David Thomas at the bar and brought him home. He just gave David the drink that was laced with sleeping pills, and when he saw David on the bed, he realized that he was not attracted to him, and he actually wanted to let Thomas go. But the problem was that he was afraid that Thomas would wake up and be very angry that he got laced with sleeping pills, because there was no way he was going to wake up and know that he wasn't drugged. So like, he just decided to slash his neck and dismember his body. He didn't keep any part of David Thomas because he was not just attracted to him. After this, Jeffrey didn't kill for 5 months because he had suicidal thoughts and he had anxiety. Wow. You've been killing people for such a long time and you're having suicidal thoughts? Wow. Like, why not just off yourself? Forgive me. So in 1991, he met 17-year-old Curtis Strutter near Marquette University at a bus stop. He told Curtis that he was going to pay him $50 for coming with him to take Polaroid pictures, just half-naked pictures, and Curtis agreed because he really needed the cash. And when Curtis got to his apartment, Jeff offered him a drink, and Curtis took it and started becoming sleepy. He slept off, and Jeff used a leather strap to hold his neck down and strangle him to death. After this, Jeff dismembered his body and preserved his skull in a refrigerator. I don't even know how he got to speak to Curtis because Curtis was actually deaf. So I don't know if Jeff knew how to speak or do sign language to make Jeff understand him or what he was saying, because he was actually deaf. And so after like a whole month of all this happening at his apartment away from his grandmother's home, the people at his apartment, called the Oxford apartment, started complaining to the management that there was a very weird smell that was coming out of the apartment, and they were just always trying to find out who it was, but they never really found out. But they also told Jeff about this, and Jeff said, oh, it was probably his dying fish, that he usually likes pet fishes, and he bought like 20 pet fishes and they all died of a particular disease. So that was probably what was spreading. So they told him to please take it out, and he did. Some other times he would lie that it was meat. Sometimes he would lie. I don't even know how he got away with this, but I guess he did. So Jeff waited for the whole apartment to calm down with the whole complaining about the smell, where a week later he met a 14-year-old boy called Conerak Sintamosphone, and he lured him into his apartment in the guise that he was going to pay him $50 for posing for Polaroid pictures. So he drugged him, and then when Conerak was actually feeling sleepy, he saw the previous body that Jeff had actually killed, which is Tony Hughes. Tony Hughes was another person that he killed just the day before that. And he saw his body, but he could not react because the sleeping drugs were just so much in him and he couldn't keep himself up. Jeff was obviously having fun with this and was expecting Conerak to die. After an hour, when Conerak didn't die, Jeff decided to go to the store to get some liquor and come back. By the time he got back, he saw Conerak on the apartment of his building and 3 women were beside him and trying to ask what was going on with him. Jeff explained that Conerak was his boyfriend and that he had taken too much to drink. So Jeff grabbed Conerak by the hand and was moving him back to the apartment when Conerak was seen struggling, like trying to fight the fact that he doesn't want to go back into the apartment, but the drugs that he was on was just too much for him to even let words come out of his mouth. So the 3 women called police officers and the police officers came, and Jeff explained to them that he was his boyfriend and that they were homosexuals. So the police officers saw this, reasoned with them, and escorted them back to the front of Jeff's apartment when the 2 ladies were trying to explain to the cops that this doesn't seem normal. Like, even if he was drunk, he wasn't supposed to be acting like this. But the police officers dissed them off and the whole thing just went into thin air. So Jeff actually took Conerak Sintamosphone back into his apartment and injected another shot of hydrochloric acid into his skull, and this is when Conerak died. And Jeff dismembered his body and preserved his skull like he does for all his victims. The next day, Jeff called in at work and decided that he wanted to take a day off, where he actually took time to dismember the 2 bodies of Tony Hughes and Conerak, and he chopped their bodies up and put them in acid and tried to preserve their skull appropriately from the previous day. So he also made sure that he had cleaned his apartment to make sure that the next victim that comes in would not even notice anything. 3 days after doing this, he met his next victim called Matt Turnover at a bus station, and Matt was just 20-year-old, but Jeff managed to convince him to follow him to Milwaukee, where he was going to pay him a sum of money for posing for nude Polaroid pictures. And as usual, Jeff drugged him, strangled him, masturbated his dead body, and took some pictures of him in different positions before cutting off his head and preserving it in his freezer. The worst part about Matt Turnover was that he was the only victim that was never reported missing. So that was really bad and such an easy get out for Jeff. Not long after, he met his next victim, a 23-year-old man called Jeremiah Weinberger. He lured Jeremiah to his apartment to take pictures for nude Polaroid pictures, drugged him with sleeping pills, and when he slept off, he strangled him and masturbated his naked body when he actually was trying to experiment on Jeremiah, because he didn't kill him right away. He just made him weak with the strangulation, and then he injected boiling water into his brain and just lived with him for 2 days. Jeremiah was misbehaving, begging for help on drugs, and Jeff just looked at him and was very happy with what he was seeing. Jeremiah eventually died of a coma. This was really sad because immediately after he died, Jeremiah chopped him off starting from the head, and then he dismembered him and put his head inside a freezer while retaining the skull in an oven. Just a week after, he met 24-year-old Oliver Lacey, where he met him at a bar and decided to bring him home to sleep with him and do the usual, in the guise of the fact that he was going to pay him $50 for posing for Polaroid pictures. And he drugged Oliver with chloroform, but Oliver didn't pass out. So Jeff got angry and just strangled Lacey to death, had sex with his dead corpse, and cut his head off and put it inside the refrigerator. He actually kept his head and his heart in the refrigerator, and put his remaining body inside acid to dissolve. 4 days later, after he killed Oliver Lacey, he was fired from work because his workplace was complaining that he was always calling in sick, or he was always calling in needing a day off. So they just fired him completely. So in the fact of hearing this news, he was sad and just decided to go to a gay bar to get his next victim. His next victim was called Joseph Bradford, and he also lied to Joseph Bradford that he was going to pay him $50 to pose for Polaroid pictures. And when Joseph Bradford came over to his apartment, he drugged him, strangled him, and dismembered his body, where he kept the torso alongside the other two victims that he had previously killed. So he kept the torso of Joseph and left his head and genitals in the refrigerator. So in July of 1991, Jeff went to a gay bar where he saw some three gay men that were obviously friends together at a bar, and he went up to meet them to ask them to come to his apartment. You know, after buying drinks for them, he asked them to come to his apartment, and he was going to pay them $100 each for posing for nude photographs. Two of the friends were like, they don't really do Polaroid pictures, but I think one of the other friends out of the three was like digging Jeff. So he decided to follow Jeff home, and by the time he got to Jeff's apartment, he noticed a foul smell and was asking Jeff, what smell is this? So Jeff said that he's using acid to clean the brick walls in the basement downstairs. And Tracy Edwards just shrugged it off and decided to sit down in the apartment. So by the time he sat down, he noticed that Jeff had locked the door, and he scaled the place out, and he saw that Jeff had naked pictures of men on the wall, and he saw some exorcism books and very creepy stuff around the house. So when he noticed all this, he started becoming very uncomfortable and told Jeff that he wanted to leave. And as he stood up and wanted to leave the apartment, Jeff came in to block his way and said that why does he want to leave? Why does everybody leave him? Tracy was very confused and was shocked because he was like, I'm not leaving you, I just don't feel comfortable in this situation. Jeff said that he can't leave, and Tracy actually put two and two together to realize that this dude is a weirdo and decided to play alongside with him. And he said, okay, then why don't you go put on the AC for me because it's really hot in here. Jeff goes in and turns on the AC, comes back and tells Tracy that he wants to show him around the house. So he's showing Tracy around the house, and he bends down to show Tracy his fish collection, where Jeff uses a handcuff to handcuff Tracy, trying to handcuff his two hands together. But Tracy noticed the first one and slips back and asks, what the fuck, man? And Jeff is just like, oh, I'm just trying to get you in motion so that we can take the Polaroid pictures and the naked pictures. Tracy Edward gets very scared and now realizes that this is probably the day that he's going to die. So Jeff carries a knife at him and forces him to sit down to watch his favorite movie with him, when Tracy looks at the side of his room and sees a barrel that smells a lot, and Tracy asks him, what is that? And Jeff just looks at him and says nothing. But in the process of all that, Jeff asks Tracy if he can hear his heartbeat. So Jeff puts his head on Tracy's chest and decides to listen to his heartbeat, that it was beating really fast, which meant that he was scared. So Jeff asked, are you scared of me or are you scared of the movie that we're watching? Tracy said that I'm scared of the movie that we're watching, not you. So Tracy Edwards was successful in not allowing Jeff kill him earlier, because he was just making Jeff go helter-skelter in his apartment and do things that he was requesting, like, oh, I need a drink, I want to dance for you. He danced for Jeff. Actually, he also told Jeff that he wanted to use the restroom. So when Jeff pointed the restroom to him and he wanted to go there, by the time he was coming out, Jeff drops the knife, and that was when Tracy attacked Jeff. And Tracy Edwards was built. He was like a built short guy. He was shorter than Jeff, but he was built. It was obvious that he goes to the gym. So he obviously had like more power and muscles to overtake Jeff. He punched Jeff in the face and ran to the door to open it, but it was so hard to unlock Jeff's door. So by the time he was unlocking it, Jeff caught him again, and again he punched Jeff, knocking Jeff out on the floor. And Tracy decided to open the door and he started shouting, he tried to kill me. So the neighbors heard this and they were confused, and one of the neighbors even came out, saw Jeff, and just ran back inside and locked her doors. Tracy Edwards ran on the streets shouting for help, and he reported to 2 police officers who tried to remove his handcuff and found out that the handcuffs keys were really, really tight. So Tracy decided to, so they asked Tracy if they could show him the location of where this, so they asked Tracy if they could show them the location of where this handcuff got to his hand. So Tracy escorted them back to Jeff's place, and when Jeff opened the door, Jeff was lackadaisical about talking to the cops. He was just shrugging off about it and told the cops that he and his boyfriend were playing a game. And Tracy shouted that, "I'm not your boyfriend, and we were not playing a game," that he tried to kill him. So the cops asked Jeff to open the door and asked if they could search the place. Jeff agreed lackadaisically and opened the door for the cops. The cops entered into the room, and one couldn't smell anything at all, and the other one said that he was smelling something like a dead rat. So they scanned the place. They are looking for things around the place, and they don't see anything. So they asked Jeff for the key for the handcuffs, and Jeff says that he was going to find the key. So one of the cops told Jeff not to worry, that he was going to find the key by himself, that he should just point to where the key was. Jeff pointed to the wardrobe in his room, and the cop went there and took the keys out. And in the process of taking the keys out, he saw a Polaroid picture, and right under that Polaroid picture, he saw multiple Polaroid pictures of all of Jeff's victims. The cop at first was trying to look at the pictures to see if they were real or it was just like his fantasy or what he's just interested in, and then the cop actually sees that he's real. So he goes over to his partner and shows his partner the photographs and is like, "This is for real." So they try to attack Jeff, but Jeff tries to run away. So they pin Jeff down. The 2 police officers pin Jeff down and they handcuff him. And right as Jeff is on the floor, facing the floor, he turns his face to one of the cops and says, "For what I have done, I deserve to be dead." A total inspection was made by the Milwaukee police community, and they found out that Jeff had 4 severed heads in his kitchen, 7 skulls inside his closet, an entire torso, 2 skeletons, a pair of severed hands, preserved penises, a scalp, 74 Polaroid pictures, old bodies, and so much more. The next day was a big deal where there were lots of police officers around the building where Jeff lived, and they were taking out a lot of things and evidence against Jeff. And not long after, Jeff confessed to all of his sins. This took a total of like 60 hours for all his confessions, in which he detailed everything down from the beginning to the very end. And he remembered everything that he did to each victim, and he was charged with 15 counts of first-degree murder. Jeff's father got information about this situation and he was heartbroken. He was shocked, but he still got a lawyer for Jeff. The lawyer actually tried to defend Jeff in court and said to the court that Dahmer was diagnosed with necrophilia, border personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, alcoholic dependence, and psychotic disorder. Another doctor that was in court, called Dr. Fred, said that Dahmer was suffering from none of this and that he was just a calculated and cunning individual. And after this whole court case, Dahmer actually requested to be killed, but he was not granted his wish, and he apologized to the society and community and told them that he knows that what he did does not deserve forgiveness, and that the only reason why he might even be at peace is because he had been diagnosed with some personality disorders, which could probably explain why he did what he did, because he himself did not know why he did what he did. So Jeff was given life imprisonment plus 10 years plus another extra 70 years, which is basically his whole life. Jeff's father, Lionel, and stepmother, Shari, actually requested to see Jeff one last time before they took him away for good. And when he saw them, they exchanged a trial hug, and the father and mother were crying while Jeff was being sent away. The following year, they found another dead body that actually turned out to also be from Jeff, and he had his 16th count on that year, and he was in jail for basically his life. So that extra 16th sentence made no big deal to him. He was just very okay about it, and the families of the victims got to have a say with Jeff one last time, and it got a little bit heated in the courtroom. Jeffrey, I hate you! it was really bad and sad for everybody to watch. Even some police officers were crying in the courtroom. So after some years in jail, when Dahmer was serving his sentence, he was plowing the farm in the prison ward when one of his inmates called Scarver carried a metal bar and hit Jeff Dahmer in the head, and this immediately caused Jeff to die. Word got out and the news carried the fact that Jeff Dahmer had been dead, and the mother of Jeff came out online and said, now that he's dead, is everyone happy? You all wanted my son dead, now he's dead. I hope you are all happy. This caused a lot of confusion and anger in the victims' parents and family members because they were confused as to what she meant by that, even though in their bodies they were actually happy. The police department was trying to get people of the town and the world to understand that Scarver was no hero, because people were trying to praise Scarver for what he did, but he actually got extra 2 counts of murder. Dahmer stated before he died that if he eventually died, that he would love to be cremated. And this was what his parents and the police department did for him. And when he died, he actually was cremated, and they shared his ashes between his 2 parents. And that was the end of Jeffrey Dahmer. To be honest, I think the reason why Jeffrey Dahmer got away with this so far long was because most of the victims were actually Black people. The police didn't really care about people of that community, especially at that time. And there were lots of complaints from people around the neighborhood, which were mostly Black, but the police didn't really take too much to it. Even sometimes the neighbor would call the police to complain about his neighbor Jeffrey, which was white. So they never really took much to it. So I think that was actually the reason why he got away with it for that long. Because there's no way, if white people were just missing anyhow like that around the same town, they wouldn't have done something about it. But it's all good, and my heart goes out to the victims, and hopefully their hearts will be at peace eventually. Thank you guys for listening in to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on all my socials. Have a nice day.